Hello, and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches from around the nation that are making the big time where they're at. This episode is brought to you by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is the leading software for high school and colleges that provide coaches the ability to write programs online, generate more than a dozen reports, and even train athletes remotely for side income. Right now, if you sign up with code BIGTIME, you'll receive a free APRE programming template, which works automatically within TeamBuildr. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day. Automate your programming without outsourcing your programming with TeamBuildr. This episode is also brought to you by PowerLift. Taking your athletic facility from concept to completion can be a challenge. At PowerLift, it's our goal to make the process as seamless as possible from start to finish. Our weight equipment is made with the toughest material that can withstand excessive use from coaches and athletes. It's sought after for its unique design, customizable appearance, affordability, and our superior warranty that training facilities want and need. Our weight rooms are designed with the athlete in mind, and we pride ourselves in our ability to outfit athletic facilities based on a team's unique goals. That's why high schools, colleges, universities, professional sports teams, and athletic performance facilities around the world have chosen us to help maximize their strength training facilities. Call us today to be contacted with a rep in your area, and give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to see for yourself why our clients are PowerLift proud. Now let's get to this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. I'm excited for today. This is the first one I've been on for a while, getting through football season, and thankful for Amanda Berg and Miles Clifton to keep the show going, and happy to hop back on. Today, it's awesome because I get the opportunity to hop on with a coach that I've seen a lot of the stuff that he's been putting out for a while now, and I think it dates back to some dynamic warm-up stuff that caught me the first time, and then from there just kept on learning. And so Coach will give us his background and all that type of stuff. But before we hop in, just wanted to give the purpose of the show. He's also an expert in velocity-based training tied with APRE. And so talking with Coach before getting on this episode that he was just sharing this week with coaches, and he's prepared for this talk. So I love it. Coach, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. And if you want to just hop into the conversation right where we're at, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Well, number one, very humbled that you asked me to be on here, Coach. And, I've always enjoyed the opportunity to connect and share. And I think even before we started this conversation, you say, secretly this podcast is about what your opportunity to create professional development for yourself and learn from like-minded and coaches and how they're evolving what they do. And so taking that education and applying it to application of what you want. So, which is a little bit of the reason why I love working at PLAE and having the opportunity. Just a quick background, 22 years as a Division I collegiate strength conditioning coach. I stepped out of that role. It's probably one of the hardest decisions I ever made. But at the same time, it was the most thoughtful decision I made because it was for my kids. When we moved from Clemson, and I've been around for quite some time, started in 96, all the way out to University of Nevada, then Georgia Southern, then to University of Dayton, had great success there. First job as a head strength coach, met my wife there, and then joined the ACC, Georgia Tech, and then finished my career at Clemson. Surely enough, I was fortunate enough to kick the Tigers' butts enough time that Coach Brownell asked me to be a Tiger, and I said, get out of this Atlanta traffic, you bet. And but my wife was 8 months pregnant when we moved. And so my wife's an athletic trainer, so we were still riding the coaching carousel. And so thought, man, and I thought, yeah, shoot, let's keep doing what we're doing. We're having a ball. And radically changed once I had my first daughter. And then the second came, of course, and began exploring and looking at ways, how do I exit out of this profession? Because it became very important for me to make sure that my kids called me dad instead of somebody else was calling me coach. And that's kind of the ugly side of this profession, And COVID was a big part of that too. That really limited my parents' ability to travel. My wife and I, we come from big families. My mom's one of 10. Her side of the family is one of 8. And I got 2 brothers. She's got 5 siblings. So family's important to us, and certainly could have picked up and moved around. But it was really important for me to be able to control that and maybe make some grassroots where we were at. So we've done a lot of different things this year. But Namely, one is we've done a house renovation. So that's the first time. I remember the first 2 years we were here, we didn't even hang a picture on the wall because we didn't want to have to repaint the walls and getting the fear that we were going to have to pack up and move. So that's just a kind of a quick background on me. But that's the great part about PLAE is, to your point, is I wanted to be able to get into a role that allowed me to continue to develop myself professionally, still be apply 22 years of coaching. And I'd have to say probably coming up this July will be my second year with PLAE. And I have been able to commit myself to professional development more than I ever have in those 2 years. I feel like I'm a better coach just because I've had the opportunity to really learn from a lot of great coaches that that you alluded to that this podcast allows. So just really thankful for PLAE giving me that opportunity, and obviously thank you very much today for giving me the opportunity to talk. So velocity-based training, right? That was kind of the genesis of this conversation. So I think I know Brian Mann's a good friend of mine, tremendous coach, done just an unbelievable, just a huge contributor to this industry, right? I mean, just a good person, very accessible. That's not always easy in this profession. So I've always admired Coach Mann for that very reason, just his accessibility to people and his willingness to help. So I think that's important. I think we need more of that in this profession and less of it. And so a little bit of what I'll share with you today, I've kind of bounced off of Coach Brian Mann. He's obviously the godfather of APRE too, and kind of showed him how I had blended these two worlds together. My first introduction to velocity-based training was back in 2006 with Bert Zorn and the Tendo unit. And I was at Georgia Southern, I was at the University of Nevada. And no, I was not. They're right here, University of Dayton. Jeez Louise. Gosh, I need another cup of coffee, I think. I don't know. And so I didn't really have enough money to buy a whole room full of Tendo units, but rather I just bought one. And I started working and learning with him and testing them out with my walk-ons. I figured if I screwed those guys up, nobody would care, right? And but learned a great deal about how to apply velocity-based training, and that was kind of the genesis of me evolving my idea behind it and thoughts. Obviously, Louis Simmons and working with Dave Tate when I was at University of Nevada, and going to those conferences and being around that and understanding the principles of dynamic and compensatory acceleration with Zortsky, the science of weightlifting and all of that. That just kind of put me on a path. And so when I saw that, I thought, man, this makes complete sense to me, because the challenge we always have is this linear periodization. And we would, I used to have the Excel spreadsheets. I think I had the old DOS Windows, was it Power Up? I think is what it was, where, man, you had to go in there and you're in DOS code and you're coding in all of your workouts, and everything was based off of that max percentage, right? We're going to bring you in, we're going to see how strong you are, and that max today was the one that you were going to pretty much live off of for the next 8 to 12 weeks. And so, and as I evolved my thinking and experience, I realized that's a pretty obsolete way to go about it, especially when you start dealing with basketball athletes who don't have a tremendous background in lifting at all. In fact, they pretty much run from it, which is just another story for another time, perhaps. But with that being said, their ability to experience changes neuromuscularly and was really, really high. So to be able to keep pace with that really allowed me to continue to evolve velocity-based training. And then more importantly, I think we have to be mindful for the athlete. We borrow from other disciplines, right, of strength training, which is weightlifting, powerlifting, bodybuilding, and yes, we do borrow it probably from CrossFit. People probably shoot me from that, but those were, I think that's where you can say that's where your Olympic combos came in later on. Olympic combos well before CrossFit. But anyways, we borrow from all those, but we have to understand that those sports are predicated on how much weight you can lift, and that is the sport. There isn't anything really going on outside the weight room or those particular events, because that is the sport. As I used to tell my athletes, we've had you for 2 hours, you get you got 22 to go screw it up. So, but unfortunately, they're still going to practice. There's individual workouts. There are recovery places that have to compete in the classroom. So APRE, when I looked at it, made sense because I looked at it from a position of being able to accommodate the athlete where they're at. And we all know the saying, maxes today are gone tomorrow, right? And so today I just talk with you a little bit about the evolution of that and maybe cite some examples of how that's done, and maybe even looking at some studies as well that have proven for me or validated for me, in addition to kind of my own case studies with my athletes. And I've shared it with a lot of coaches at every level, at the professional level, collegiate level, and even the high school level. And it is a system that is whatever velocity-based tool or instrument or software or hardware that you're using is applicable. It depends on, what do you want? It's totally up to you. So I will demonstrate a little bit of it through the lens of GymAware. But again, you can use Perch, you can use VMAX Pro, but you can use any system that's out there and get the same results. So that's a lot of talking. I'm going to pause right there and give you the opportunity to maybe coach set me up here, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, I love it. So just getting the background a little bit of where you're coming from and what you're learning, and Brian Mann, being that, like, I'm sure everybody's read the ebook and everybody dived in and just like learned so much from him. And recently he put out a pretty cool course that's really, like just another time for me to like, okay, this is what we're trying to hit and why we're trying to hit it. And it makes just so much sense. And I like how much information that he continues to put out. So when you reference him as a good friend, and, obviously the godfather, and at least in America is what you said for velocity-based training, like the source is good, right? For this conversation. And so appreciative of him being able to share information, and then for you to be able to tie these things together and do it in a great way. I guess my second remark is that it's so the maxes today are gone tomorrow, how much percentages fluctuate, what it looks like for us to be at 100%, in relation to like how well we're feeling, all that type of stuff is why I dove into this a long time ago. And just knowing that like everything that I had done through high school and even preliminary stuff in college was percentage based. And there was like people would try to accommodate for that, like saying, 90 or 95% of your 1 rep max is what we're going to use for your training max or whatever. And they're trying to do these accommodations, which totally, like it makes sense. Like it was a step in the right direction. But I think when you finally start to auto regulate is when you really started to learn more about your body, how you're moving, and what it looks like for you to be your best that day. And I think that's originally, the intent behind it. And then also, that's where most seasoned athletes and masters lifters start to get to is like, okay, how do I feel that day? I'm going to do the best that I can. Right. And so
absolutely. Yeah. I'll cite some examples of that today. Yeah, for sure. No, it's exactly it. And to my point is, I think if I really elaborated on it enough, but our athletes are asked to compete outside of the weight room. So there's so many other variables that come into our training environment. And we have to recognize that. And it also, with the velocity-based training and looking at the APRE and combining, and I'll show kind of today too, that it's a great way to start having a guided conversation. So it's okay to see dips, in those performance, but if we see trends that's downwarding, right, that's an invitation for us to start having a conversation with our athletes. Man, what's going on? What's going on? How's your sleep? How is your nutrition? What's going on in your life personally, right? So it's just a great tool to be able to, again, enhance performance for that athlete. And really, I'll even demonstrate it too from the standpoint of in season. I think we're always saying, well, we just want to maintain in season. Now there's an opportunity here with this velocity-based APR. There's an opportunity for us to continue to improve through the season as well. So I guess without further delay, okay for me to share my screen and Kind
Yeah.
of dive right in. All right, cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So let me see if I can just hit play here. Cool. So what is velocity-based training? Really, it's using velocity as this biometric feedback to gauge resistance training, right? Neuromuscularly, hypertrophy, whatever, mostly on that neural side, right? That's where we're going to see the greatest amounts of adaptation in the beginning. And with the right application and training intent, you can determine how much load you should be adding and removing for each set. And I'll show you how we do that. And then creating profiles based on that athlete's need. And I'll give you kind of a demonstration around that. And again, back to that point, this becomes very invaluable for me, and it radically changed how I prescribed and how I periodized my athletes' training. And it was very, very helpful, especially for that freshman athlete who was making those exponential jumps neuromuscularly week to week, day to day. This allowed me to challenge them, put a level of strain on them that didn't over exceed their tolerance, right? Which is what we're really talking about here. That was a video, but I won't play that here. So which one do I use? I use strictly mean velocity, and Brian and I have had multiple conversations around this. And mean velocity is a measure of the velocity from start of the concentric lift to the end of the concentric lift, okay? So that's what I look at, and largely I don't look at peak velocity because I don't measure velocity for Olympic lifting. I always consistently found form for function was always compromised the moment that I started prescribing velocity in those movements, right? Do I play around with it or maybe give kids an understanding like, hey, you can use some more weight on those cleans. You don't have to keep the greens on there all the time. Like let's challenge you a little bit. And I certainly think there's a place for that. But at the end of the day, those are very explosive, dynamic, and they're almost very plyometric, right? And I think a RSI is a better measure of how effective your explosion is than velocity itself there, right? So I live exclusively in mean velocity because there's really only two lifts that I'm using for velocity, which is a host of squat variations and bench press. And so I live exclusively in that range. And that's just me. I'm not saying you don't have to. I know plenty of coaches that have programs in the peak velocity, and they're extremely successful and can share a lot of insight and value. I'm going to kind of just share with you what I've found to be the most successful there. It's not the only way. It's just a way. So traditional force velocity curve. We've all seen this. Force velocity curve states that when force increases, velocity decreases, and vice versa. Basically, if I want to apply force to something, whether I'm pushing or pulling action, that could be a kettlebell, a bar, an opponent, whatever the case, I have to exert force on that, right? And I think one of the things that I want to address is this notion that the moment that I start saying velocity-based training, I think people generally default to this idea that I have to use really lightweight and go extremely fast. And I hope today to be able to demonstrate to you that that's not the case. If I need an athlete to get stronger, I can live on the left side of this spectrum and assign velocities in association with this desired training adaptation, this desired training outcome, right? And I'll probably live really in this speed strength range. I think the strength speed range is speed strength and starting. This is where the plyometric measurements come in. Now, if you've got maybe a push band or something, great. But I don't see the value. They're already explosive in nature. To me, the value may be looking at ground contact time and introducing a plyomat, some sort of RSI as a KPI there. So,
nice
all
job,
that being said,
nice job with the plug for Rich Burnett. I like
that.
Plyomat for sure.
Yeah. Rich is he's an amazing coach and another good friend, and he's got something pretty unique what he's got there. I call it the poor man's force plate, and it's
for sure. He's
Yeah,
a big time strength alum. And one of the things that, for the people that are listening on the podcast, let me just do a little bit of describing for people. So force velocity curve, when you talk about like absolute strength or basically the most that you could lift, a lot of times the speeds are going to be a lot slower. So like coach is showing a chart right now, it's 0.15 to 0.35 meters per second. But what he's saying is as you get lighter and you're going from a little bit more speed, it's going to be closer to like 0.75 to 1 meter per second is what the range would be. Now,
Mhm.
The thought that he was just saying was anything that where you're starting to slide into speed strength or starting strength and it's above 1, he's saying, okay, should we be looking at more like jumps and sprints and things that can be related that way? And that was something that, the original velocity-based training or the best velocity-based training is still going to be plyometrics. It's still going to be sprints, but in the weight room, I think these charts are super important to know. And I love where you're going with this, coach. So just wanted to do a little bit of description for the listeners.
Yeah, no question. And of course, I can get you a copy of this chart. Maybe you can make it as part of your podcast download. People can kind of see that. But yeah, the absolute strength is at 0.15 to 0.35 meters per second. We have kind of the circa max strength at 0.35 to 0.5 meters per second. And then accelerative strength, 0.45 to 0.75 meters per second. And then strength speed would be that 0.75 to 1.0 meters per second. And again, I kind of assign a mean velocity and association with that desired training intent, right? Each point, there's an associated training quality that I want to create. And that obviously corresponds to that particular velocity. So again, some people will maybe argue that it's not as clear cut as that. Yeah, but I can tell you there's almost an APRE even built into this model and range, right? It's, if I'm feeling it today and I'm doing this accelerated strength of 0.45 to 0.75 meters per second, well, then guess what? If I'm feeling it, maybe you're going to be closer to that 0.45 range, but maybe I'm not feeling it so much today. I'll go up to that 0.75 meters per second range. That is, again, just in that range alone is almost a built-in automated APRE within it there that way. So, but I will say this, I think velocity-based strength or velocity-based training is to strength training what heart rate training is to conditioning. So if you stick to a certain zone, right, or in this instance, a certain velocity, right, you're going to reap a physiological benefit from that. So with that being said, what I like to do with velocity zones is I have a training intent, right? With that training intent and that training method, right? So my training intent, absolute strength. What are our rep range with that? You could probably already know what that is, coach. That's going to be in that 1 to 4 rep range, right? We know what that is. And absolute strength is grinding out. That's kind of where the powerlifting folk maybe live during competition, right? It's going to take them 2, 3, 4 seconds to get a lift up, right? You're going to be in that range. And that sub-maximal strength, that circa max strength 2 to 5, right? So that's going to be in that 0.35 to 0.45 meter range. Then we have the accelerated strength range. You get to 0.45 to 0.75. So that rep range is going to be 3 to 8. And then you have strength speed. That's going to be 3 to 5. And obviously we can manipulate work to rest ratios and any of this. And anytime I get in that strength speed, that 0.75 to 1.0, and I'm living it around, I want to kind of go every 30 to 45 seconds. So that's I found it to be most effective with the training. And then the training intent with that. So if I'm looking at absolute strength, obviously we can look at really heavy strength training. It could be squat singles, isometric deadlifts, those types of things. When we get into the circa submax strength, we're looking at really modifying heavy strength, like dynamic strength, right? Squat, bench, deadlift, those types of things. And then accelerated strength, you're going to see more of a hypertrophic effect in that 0.45 to 0.75 meter. This is where we're talking about maybe some heavy Olympic lifting or squats, barbell complexes that we see there. And then your strength speed, really just, again, heavy ballistics. Again, using those Olympic lifts, but you're talking maybe full clean, snatches, loaded jumps, squats, those types of things. So there's what I mean by associating zones with training intent and training methods. Any questions on that so far, or something you want to maybe highlight to the listeners?
No, this is a great chart, and what coach is talking about with possibly giving some resources out with this, it might be super beneficial so that you can see how it's broken up. But his main categories are training intent, training methods, and then some examples of each one of those, and that's how he went through and kind of described them. And awesome stuff. Really gives you an idea of some of the ways that he thinks about his programming and what it looks like to tie the velocity-based training with the APRE.
Sure. So I'm going to kind of walk us through here this sample progression for an athlete. So an example here is a freshman, and this freshman needs to increase size and strength. How do I know that? Because we use the NBA Combine. Why? Well, because my guys think it just takes heart to play the game. I say, well, there is a combine. They have to show a level of physical prowess. So we're going to use the NBA Combine as that benchmark for that. So we look at this athlete when they come in. We're going to look at their height, obviously their wingspan, right? This young man in this example is 6'9", got a 6'10" wingspan. He weighs 202 pounds. So 6'9", 202. Man's a string bean, okay? And he's incredibly lean, right? But lacks a tremendous amount of strength. In the NBA Combine, it's a 185 rep max test. He mustered up a goose egg on that. Couldn't even push it one time. And then I add a pull-up test and was only able to muster up 6. I think he probably should have just given him 5 on that one, but he really tried hard on that 6, so I went ahead and gave it to him. And so knowing that this young man, one, needs to increase his size, so there'll probably be some dietary intervention here too, but also training-wise, what's the best way for me to accommodate his training, right? And if I'm looking at that around training intent and training methods and looking at what's the best range based on this force velocity curve, then I know that 0.45 to 0.75 meters per second is going to be really, really optimal for him, especially lower body, to train, because that's going to create a really nice hypertrophic effect, but also create the strength stimulus that I need without compromising his performance needs on the court. Last thing I want to do is put my kids through a leg workout to where it's going to impact their ability to perform that day or that afternoon, or who the heck knows, as soon as we leave to go play on the court, right? So with that being said too, I'm going to kind of live in that 3 to 8 rep range with that accelerated strength there as well. So with that being said, and I will preface this by the saying, obviously this is examples of freshmen. We have gone through a movement screen. We have identified that this athlete can, with good form and technique, perform a squat. Okay. If they couldn't, probably not going to prescribe velocity with that athlete in the beginning. There may be some physical accommodations that we need to appropriate to make sure that maybe they can do some of those. But there very well may be. We can maybe do a rear foot elevated. Maybe that athlete lacks some ankle mobility or has an ankle injury that limits them to be able to functionally do a back squat or a front squat. Then we can do a rear foot elevated squat, get that leg up there, take that ankle dorsiflexion out of that, and be able to still accommodate this. But through this example here, we're just going to say they look great. They got great form and technique. We're going to rock and roll. So that first day is really a discovery day. I'm going to go through a series of sets, 5, 4, 3, and I'm just going to stay in that 3 range and ask that athlete to hit a certain velocity, mean velocity average, right? So in this instance, we've already determined 0.45 to 0.75 is the golden standard. I'm going to try to get as close as I can to that 0.45 with that athlete on that discovery day. So let's say warms up, set of 5, set of 4, third set, this athlete's worked themselves up to this 215 pounds and do 3 reps, and the average mean velocity was 0.49 meters per second. So they're still above that 0.45. They're going to try to attempt this 4th set of 3 reps, and the mean average, okay, so they went from 215 to 220. That mean average now dropped down to 0.42. We're done. Finished for the day. So the next time that athlete comes in, they know that their best performing set the week prior was 215. And that's important because that will have an impact on how we advance forward, right? So we use Team Builder as our way to capture that metric. I don't capture every single set. I want to know what that starting set is. That's a really quick way for that athlete to have a history, to understand, all right, what were my best? It allows me to chart and be able to see things too, and see if I'm seeing upwarding trends, downwarding trends, or plateauing, right? And that allows, again, that invitation to have conversations with the athlete around the other things that they need to be doing to leverage their athleticism, not rely on it, which is sports nutrition, sleep and recovery, right? So all of those things. So the next time that athlete comes in, 215, we're going to take 40 pounds less. So I always say start 40 pounds less than your best and use that for a set of 5. Okay. And they'll probably be above that prescribed 0.45 to 0.75 range. That's okay. No problem. Set 2 is going to be 20 pounds less for a set of 4. All right. And then we get into what I call this challenge set. And this is kind of where APRE is built in, and where I kind of borrowed some of the ideas behind Brian Mann and his APRE. And instead of associating a percentage, which again, I think percentages are limiting based on what you think a max is, I just kind of blended that and created this outline here. So if you're looking at this chart, you have this 1 to 2 rep velocity. So there's a prescribed velocity, 0.45 to 0.75. You have 1 to 2 rep velocity. If you miss 1 or 2, you're going to lower 5 to 10 rep for your final set. All right. If you get 3 to 4 reps, all right, then you keep the weight the same for your final set. All right. If you get 5 to 6, you're going to add 5 to 10. If at 7 reps, you're still cranking out for every rep, you're still hitting that 0.45 to 0.75 range. You're going to end the set, add 15, boom. And then that's how we do that. And so in this example, if you will, let's say that athlete got set 1, they hit their range. And again, this isn't a mean. This is, you have to hit that range each one of your reps. So the moment that you maybe below that 0.445, that's when the set ends, right? So 1 to 2 gets it, 3 to 4 hits it, 5 hits it, 6 misses, they rack the weight. So in looking at this chart, that 5 to 6 range is I'm going to add 5 to 10. So 5, I'm going to add 5 pounds to my final working set, which then puts me at from 215 to 220, right? And then that final set of 3, that athlete, it's every single time they hit. Now we're back to average, right? Average mean velocity of 0.45 to 0.75 or whatever you prescribe. It's going to hit it every single time. It's pretty, I wouldn't say magical. I still get blown away by how consistent that allows them to hit that range and where they want to be at based on their capability of performance. And there's always the people like, well, aren't their kids cheating the system? I've never experienced that because they compete and they're wanting to do better the next time. If anything, I've had to maybe talk a couple of athletes off the ledge. Like, hey, man, it's okay, man. Like, dude, you're playing more minutes? Or, hey, what are you doing? How is everything academically? Well, I mean, that's probably what it is. Like, don't worry about it. I've never experienced a kid trying to cheat the system with it. If anything, this teaches them how to push themselves more. It really helps a lot with the females. And I've seen situations where, I've had freshmen, they get to this block where they all of a sudden now they got the 45s on each side. They're scared, right? And you got a veteran there that says, look, you just moved that at 0.89 meters per second. You're going to crush this. And they find courage in the velocity. And it's a great way to kind of guide and steer leadership too from the veteran athletes as well. So that is literally how we accommodate that and build that into our plan. And so that 220 becomes the new max, right? That becomes their new velocity max in the prescribed training range relative to the intent of the training and the exercise methods that we're applying, right? In this particular instance was squat. So when they come in next week, they're going to take 40 pounds less off that 220 for their set of 5. Say 20 pounds off that 220 for the set of 4, which is obviously 200 pounds. And then that final set is that challenge set, is that 220. And are they going to be able to get that range of 1 to 7? Any thoughts on that or anything we need to share?
Oh no, I like it. This is great. And one of the things you mentioned, females having more confidence, and the other thing I see it, especially at the high school level, is it'll help males make sure that they are having the correct load, right? So
Yes.
every guy lifts too much, and every female doesn't lift enough.
Yes.
That's totally generalized, but that's
No, it's true.
totally what I see from freshmen all the time. So
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
good.
I honestly, the velocity base was probably the saving grace behind bench press for me and the male athletes, because I never saw my guys going to failure on squat, right? You never wanted to do that, right? It's literally beg, borrow, and steal to get them parallel, number one, right? And so, yeah, this became a great way for us to kind of put a governor on those enthusiasms of these male teenagers, if you will, to manage that. And that helped obviously lessen the chance for injury too. So, but how did I regulate volume load, with the athlete and in season? Obviously, we have a lot more liberties in the off season to really challenge and push. And again, this system accommodates that. Basketball coaches have a lot more, let's say, contact hours than say football does. And basketball coaches are notorious for going all the way up to the edge in terms of their ability and allotment of time. And so there's still a tremendous amount of stress that happens to that athlete, even in the off season, because there's still a lot of training that happens with the coaches. So this chart here, or this example that I'm showing, is how we've accommodated this athlete over a course of a season. So I really show here is this date. This is actually Amir Sims. Amir ended up leading the league in reboundings, but this is his freshman year. And on 10/2/17, so this was October, right? This was the week before we started two-a-days, which I can't understand why we do two-a-days still in sports, because we're training almost 46 weeks out of the year anymore, 52. So it's like, yeah, you don't need to do that. But anyways, that's another topic for another time. But in this example here, this is real life now. This is Amir, one leg front squat, single leg rear foot elevated front squat. He did 195 pounds at 0.35 meters per second. Okay. So this is the week now before we start two-a-days. The next week, we come in, he drops to 165 and can only muster 0.39 meters per second. So he went from 195, 0.35 to 165 to 0.39. Why? Workload and the capacity was through the roof, right? And he just attacks me. But as the weeks progress, okay, so that's 10/9/17, 10/15/17 works himself into 180 at 0.35. We're getting closer. 10/22/17 is at 190 at 0.42. All right, man, we're already moving that bar faster, only 5 pounds off. But then we'll fast forward here, and that continued to trend up. But I jump right down here to this 12/1. This is in December. And we see a drop from this 190 down to 170 at 0.72. What happened? This is what happened. Amir was playing behind one of our top centers, and that was Elijah Thomas. He rolls his ankle. So now, guess what happens? More minutes of practice, more reps, and more playing time. Right? But as the weeks progress, from that 12/1/17, 170 at 0.72, 12/11/17, 185 to 0.52. And we continue to see this trend increase all the way to this, where we get into the new year. We're in February 12/18. We're in conference play. We're getting ready. He's at 215 at 0.4 meters per second. So he went from back in October of the previous year there, October 2/17, he was at 195 at 0.35 meters per second. Now in the new year, 2/12 18 to 15 at 0.4 meters per second, almost 0.05 meters per second faster, and he's using 20 pounds more weight. That's what we want, right? That's exactly what we want to have. But not only did he get stronger, but he increased his rate of force development. And that really, I think, paints a picture of the value of being able to blend that APRE with the velocity and being able to accommodate that athlete where they're at in association with a season load or what's happening outside of competition.
It's really cool to be able to see for the athlete, too, like you go from not starting to being a starter. You go from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, and with all of those things, right? And did you say he was a freshman?
He was a freshman, yes.
Okay, so you're also transitioning to being at a bigger level of basketball, and you gain 20 pounds and more rate of force development, right? So at a faster speed. So like that's unreal, and what a great way to get young guys involved, right? So like what I mean by that is now you have an example to be like, oh, this is what this guy did. Let's see if you can do it too. That's really cool.
Sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We grew from this testing model to a monitoring model, right? And so we don't have to wait to see improvements. We get to see them right away. And I can promise you this example that, from that week before to when we were right into two-a-days, don't think I didn't take that information to the coaches and said, look, this is a demonstration of what we're doing to them now. We have to be smart. We have to be smart. We have to be mindful. It's not just about you feeling good leaving the court. We got to make sure our athletes are leaving the court feeling good too, feeling confident about what they accomplished there that day. And it was amazing when we managed load and intensity with this information, and we're doing that in a number of different ways. We're obviously looking at heart rate and accumulations of those stresses in association with competition as a kind of a backdrop. You really start painting a picture of accommodation. So yeah, that's even another topic for another time. But,
yeah.
But ultimately, that's what we were able to do is that we were able to utilize this velocity-based training and this APRE to really balance the stress of practice and competition. This volume load, this thing we're always trying to say, am I doing too much? Am I not enough? We have to create strain, but the question is, does that strain exceed a level of tolerance that is detrimental to that athlete's performance? Does it heighten the risk for injury? Does it cause concern for underperforming because of accumulation, right? And so being able to do that allows us to progress at the right pace in association with the athlete's needs and really accommodate daily and weekly variations in performance respective to what's happening outside the weight room too.
So Coach, I have a question for you.
Yeah, man.
Your intent that you had for the season for Amir stayed the same, right? He was hitting the same 0.5 to 0.75 for the majority of the season, right?
Yes.
Okay. So do you find that you have to do less changing? Like so many times what I see coaches will do if they have a 4-month chunk of time is they'll vary intensities, they'll change all these different things. Would you ever give him feedback like, okay, guys, right now we want to be closer to the 0.5 range. And then, a few weeks later, okay, now we want to be closer to the 0.7, or was it just like, okay, as long as you're in this range, we're getting the work that we need to get done. As
long as you're in that range, you're in the workout we need to get done. Yeah. Okay. And then I obviously, because I was able to record those digitally and the athlete, I had to record just what they did, their performance, right, on that, what they accommodated for that day. That just allowed me then to be able to look at that very quickly, see a brief snapshot of that, see a graph that trended in what direction. And let's be honest, it wasn't a lot of me filing and looking through. And if something went down, the athlete was like, man, why did I go down, coach? Mm-hmm. All right. And like, okay. Or we're going into week 2, we're coming down. Like you find out, man, that athlete wasn't getting a lot of sleep, got some things going on with their life personally. Other ones, nutritionally. I already knew they had bad nutritional habits. I just but I could have talked to, I was blue in the face. I needed this to be able to demonstrate to them that those nutritional habits were having an immediate impact on their ability to perform consistently. So then it became a far easier conversation. It's the same one that, maybe your parents are telling you what to do, and they're right, but you either had to discover it or it took a total stranger to tell you that, and your parents are over going, geez, that's what I've been telling you, right? So I don't think it's very much different from coaching. There's probably a lot of coaching and parenting parallels there for sure. So, but no, I would literally use this year round, and then I would change velocities in association with how strong is strong enough. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about that. Once they kind of got to a point where I felt like they were strong enough, let's try to maximize rate of force development. It's like, all right, you're at 220 pounds and you're already squatting 405. I'm not so sure if I got you to 410 or 415 or even 420, how that was going to really improve your game, right? We know the value of getting strong. You can't replace that. Obviously, you're still accommodating that with the velocity on that left end of the spectrum, right? But as we got more to that ceiling, then we lived a little bit more to the right of that curve. And we did a lot of that too, based on minutes and those types of things as well. If you knew a guy played a lot of minutes or a gal played a lot of minutes, it was sometimes you just have them come in and they kind of live in that strength speed range, that 0.75 to 1.0. And that's kind of where they live. So the only thing I really ever manipulated was the intensity through the velocity application. But we kind of lived in this 5-4 challenge set 3 year round with the athletes. I think every time I say that, I'm always cautioning myself, should I say that? Because it sounds lazy, but it wasn't. It really, the results kind of spoke for themselves. And I think probably the most rudimentary or the most elementary form of APRE is reps in reserve, right? Leaving some more into the tank. And I won't get into all the particulars of some studies on that, but there's a lot of research that demonstrates the value of that. Maybe you can make a link to that study and for your listeners to look at. So how we manage load, again, living primarily in that mean velocity, I kind of explained that. We recorded that heaviest working set. Again, before I was a team builder guy, I used Google Sheets. That was the best way for me to be able to do that. I attached it to a Google Forms. This was attached to a sheet that gave me kind of my graphing there. It was kind of built in, but I do a bastardized version of triphasic training. I think everybody does. I don't know that everybody does exactly what was outlined in the original book by Coach Dietz and another great coach. But what I did is I take the same model and I apply this triphasic training of the first 2 weeks is a 6-second descent, right? Then the next 2 weeks is a 3-second pause at the end range of that isometric that I want, of that range of motion. Or if I see a sticking point, I make them go down to that, right, and hold that. And then the last 2 weeks is free run. Now I'm going to tell you right now, my guys couldn't wait, gals couldn't wait for free run, right? That was, and it was almost a built-in testing week right in there, because you can imagine after, accommodating 4 weeks of, hey, look, I am going to be, as I'm building horsepower, I'm building the brake system too, right? I'm building that part of it in there. That last 2 weeks was that built-in testing. And we saw major changes. Now, the best part is, again, maxes today are gone tomorrow. So we get down there the 6th and final week. They've got this new max. I promise you, when they came back on that to repeat that 6-second descent cycle, the APRE in association with that velocity, they had to accommodate that. So they had to go down. But in the prevailing weeks, they improved. Their body accommodated. And guess what happened? They improved, and we continue to see that upwarding trend with that athlete. So again, 2-2-2. First 2 weeks, 6-second descent. The next 2 weeks thereafter that. So week 3 and 4, we're at 3 seconds at the end range, and then the last 2 weeks, 5 and 6, man, it's free run.
I I want to do two things. So I want to go back to a statement that you had earlier that you said something that it sounds lazy, but I think there's beauty in simplicity, right? A lot of people will talk about that. And I think what you've done is you found a system here that works. And you found a system that gives the feedback that you need to make decisions. It gives the athletes the feedback that they need to make decisions. And I love this extra variable right here, because I was looking for one more thing that would allow us to change the stimulus slightly, to continue to get, and you can do that by exercise selection, no doubt. But like, I love this tie-in right here. My second piece of this is, what times of the year are you doing this? Will you do this throughout the season too? I know we had a triphasic roundtable not that long ago. Well, this past spring with a few coaches, and some coaches, they would just use it year round. I know that Scott Meyer up at Farmington, he's using triphasic all the time. And he just times it up well within their season. What is your response to that? And what's that look like for you guys?
Yes. So it is accommodated year round, but it's accommodated for the athlete. So minutes played, right, in season really determines this triphasic application, right? Obviously, if we got some people playing some heavy minutes, and I categorize heavy minutes, anything above 25 minutes in a game, that's pretty heavy. And we had some kids, Amir was playing 36 minutes on average. And you're usually doing that once every 48 to 72 hours. So he wasn't doing a great deal of triphasic training during that time, right? However, the guys that were playing 10, 12 minutes, right, limited minutes, well, guess what? You're not playing because, one, you probably lack a physical capability, and two, you just don't understand the system enough, and there's a maturation that's not there yet. So you know what? I'm not gonna sit around and let you be maintaining anything. The precedence is we got to get better. So playing time was the determinant factor of how we accommodated triphasic training year round. Played more, you got less of it in season, and if you played less, you got a lot of it year round.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good way to think about. And I'm dealing with multi-sport athletes that have a lot of different goals and a lot of different things throughout the season, and to be able to balance those things, that's a whole nother conversation, right? But I like basing it off of minutes and the stress that they have still. No doubt.
And then to your point, dude, how do we regulate volume load? One of the things is, I said, how strong is strong enough? And the research is there. We always hear this 2 times your body weight. I always said lean body mass, and that kind of worked out to that 1.75 usually of your body weight. But I always looked at lean body mass, and I always tried to reference lean body mass. I never called it fat mass. I called it non-contractile tissue. It's like we don't, here, put on this 25-pound vest, and I want you to go out and be able to perform, be able to go the same distance, the same speed, at the same intensity for the same duration. Can't do it. So what we want to make sure is we're accommodating as much lean body mass as possible and non-contractile tissue at the very least, right? So we know the literature that says that's how strong enough needs to be. And that's when really, at that point, we weren't really messing around in this absolute strength, this circa max strength, this accelerated strength. We were really mostly living in the strength speed range at that point, 7.5, 1.0. And it was really high intensity, a lot of clusters of workouts where you're just doing back-to-back sets, maybe even pairs of 3. And it's just go from one to the other once we get to that level of fitness, right? Or I should say the level of strength, excuse me, and then to continue to accommodate that. I only did 1 time your upper body strength. Probably most football coaches that are hearing this said, oh, hell no, there's no way that's going to be. But I'm dealing with guys with 6'10", 7-foot wingspans. That's a long way to push for some long, skinny arms on those cats. And but that proved to be really good. And to be honest with you, that changed, obviously, if guys had draft opportunities or we wanted to accommodate the NBA combine piece. But yeah, we did that. And again, lower body, and I'm speaking through the lens of basketball now, we live at 0.45 to 0.75 for the most of their career until they got to that pinnacle of, 2 times their lean body mass. Again, that created that hypertrophic response. Rarely do we ever see a basketball player that's too big. And then we used RSI to gauge that. Were they getting so big that they losing their ground contact, losing their springiness, if you will? And then upper body, I kind of lived in that 2.2 to 0.45 meters per second range with them. That was enough of a grinder for them, but it didn't. Nobody had to peel bars off anybody's chest. To your point, like, I never had to program biceps and triceps for my guys because they always did it. I never had to program abs for the ladies. They're going to do it, and I use those as, you want to come in and get some extra work? Come on, we'll do an arm farm workout, or we'll do an ab circuit or something like that to make it fun, right?
Yeah. So this saying continues to pop up, and I think it eventually has to become a principle for me. Is like athlete the lower and body build the upper. You can continue to see that over and over and over, and within performance athletics, right? So it's like,
yes, yeah. I always joke. I wish there was a two-way mirror in every teenage boy's bedroom, because most oftentimes that they have any experience weightlifting, when they show up, they develop their mirror muscles is the ones they can see. Their posterior chain, the backside is just horrendous. So nobody's coming in and flexing and showing their legs off. There's nothing sexy about that, right? Although I think the shorter shorts might in basketball might be that trend coming back might help a little bit of the squat work that we try to do, but who knows? And again, this is an all-inclusive system, right? This is just one piece of the pie. Obviously, when our athletes come in, we're going to assess their strength. We're going to look at their power. We're going to look at force absorption, their mobility, their ability to stabilize. Is this a mobility issue? Is this a flexibility issue? Is this a motor control issue? And then we're looking at conditioning levels and fitness. How do we create levels of fitness, which we do really uniquely with the Polar system? Talk a lot of coaches about that, and the fact that, it's so subjective with conditioning, right? Did you get stronger? Yeah, I did. How, I'm using more weight. Did you jumping higher? Yeah, look how much higher I'm jumping on the plow mat, or how much I'm able to hit the vertex. Are you quicker? Yeah, sure. Look at my 5-10-5, or look at my 3/4 sprint, whatever. Are you in better shape? Well, I don't feel tired, or he doesn't look tired, or she doesn't look tired. Being able to really prescribe specifically, one, what is your fitness level? What is your max heart rate? And then prescribing off of that a level of fitness level and classification. So that'll tell us exactly what that athlete needs to bring their body up to speed. We're able to see trends in that. We don't look at VO2 max, we record it, but we don't look at it. In any sort of power sport, we're looking at heart rate recovery. That is the pinnacle of what we want in an anaerobic or anaerobic glycolytic sport. How quickly does your heart rate recover? So in the game of basketball, the average play mass lasts 1 minute and 20 seconds with a 45-second recovery. And so when my coach would start having practices and to build toughness in, he wasn't calling fouls, and we were going 2 or 3 minutes during an episode. He was like, these guys look like they're out of shape. I'm like, that's not the way the game's played, right? And then we're using the Hawkins dynamics. We're looking at foot and arch. How does that impact? The foot feeds the pelvis. So do we need to have some sort of intervention there? So some foot intrinsics we can improve. Nothing sexy about a flexible big toe, but basketball players are notorious for having awful big toe mobility issues, which is a hindrance in terms of horizontal displacement, trying to increase better acceleration mechanics. And more oftentimes they wear shoes based on who endorses them versus do they fit their feet. And then we're using our movement screen and all of those nutrition, sleep, hygiene interventions as well. So it's not just one piece of the puzzle, but there's a lot of pieces that go along with it.
Coach, thanks for taking the time to do this. Thank you for going through all of those things and how you blend APRE and velocity-based training together. I think that's next level. Obviously, you've done it for a long time at a high level, and now you're coaching other coaches how to do it. But what I really mean by that is I think this will be the way of the future. To say that velocity-based training is only a fad, I think is probably a little bit off. I think most of the time we want more information that's going to be beneficial for us to make better decisions, right? And velocity-based training devices to do that are definitely going to be the way to go. And the other things that I love how you've done it is you show people how to compete in the weight room. Helps prescribe what they should be doing. I continue to think about a freshman boy or a freshman girl, either lifting too heavy or too light, and just getting to the point where they're lifting optimally. And we just know that the weight room is a piece of the puzzle. And it's kind of like that last slide, where you said it's just one piece of everything that we're doing. But man, it's something that could be a huge piece, especially for a team or a school that hasn't been doing something to this effect. So
sure.
I appreciate all the information that you just put out there. And I know that when coaches speak with the passion that you have for what you're doing, it's always fun to listen to.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And to your point, yeah, I think as we continue to introduce technology into the weight room, I think we're always challenged with the application. How do we apply what we know? And more oftentimes than not, in talking with coaches around velocity, they get it. Like, you throw the force velocity curve up there, they understand that. It's the application to it. And that's really my driving force. I'm going to get a plug in here for PLAE Academy is our development of that. There's a lot of things that we can have on PLAE Academy and talk about, because there's just a host of a lot of stuff. But really my intent behind that was from an educational standpoint. There's a couple of attempts, but ultimately from the educational pieces, I wanted an application-based approach to the education. And you can find lots of information. You really struggle with application of that information. So when we create content on there, we really, really are asking our authors to solve an industry pain and then deliver it. Yeah, here's what the research says. That gave me clues, but this is how I'm applying it through a good, better, best case scenario, a minimum effective dose. Because there are some coaches, I'm sure like yourself, that you've got hundreds of athletes that you see a day. I was responsible for 15. So my ability and the things that I were afforded later in my career allowed me more time. It gave me more think tank time, to be able to evolve some of these things. But I will say this system accommodates anybody. In fact, I was talking to Coach Mark Hoover at York Comprehensive, and he was really intrigued about doing this, and shared this with Mark, and he's brought it in, but he was like, I don't have a lot of velocity-based instruments to measure. And I said, well, why don't you just take one right now and put it on your rack? And so everybody can still do their set of 5 and 4, but then you're pulling kids over and say, I want you to do your challenge set. They do their challenge set, and then they can go over to their other rack that doesn't have a velocity on it, but now you're tracking their success on their challenge set. And that's a great way to introduce velocity-based training on a beer budget with champagne ambitions, right? And being able to get that in there and experience velocity-based training and apply that. I think to your point, I think it is a wave of the future, but the challenge to that wave is the application. And anytime we are bringing data in, that data shouldn't pause us or delay us or limit our ability to gain better perspective and insight around our athletes' training. It should elevate it. It should cause me to have to do less work because I'm making more informed decisions about my athletes' training. So we need to be able to use this technology in a really meaningful way to expand our capabilities and not limit them. So numbers are numbers. They're one-dimensional, right? And anytime that we're collecting data, we also have to remember we're not collecting data, right? There's that 22 other hours during the day where the athletes aren't around. What are they doing, right? But performance, it's multi-dimensional. And I think this velocity-based training blended with this APRE, again, allows us to start leveraging our athletes' athleticism, allows us to see maybe where there are accommodations that we have to have as coaches in volume mode, not because it follows this undulated wave pattern that we've kind of sinisterly came up with, but it accommodates the athlete what they need, where they're at. So you're giving them what they need, nothing that they don't.
That's the thing right there, right? And when you can say, you started out a little bit, I wrote this down, is this like idea of where the research meets application, right? And just having that as the goal of the PLAE Academy. And I just read recently, like evidence-based and science-based does not mean like proven. It's more like it gives us a really good idea for us to continue the application and see, it's like when we do application as a strength coach, is you're trying to find trends that are working and then just go with it, right? And kind of take that. And I think this is just a great way for us to find a trend. And we talked about like a group setting. This application of technology has to make our life easier. And if it doesn't, then it's not worth it, right? It's
correct.
In my opinion, when I'm working with the number of athletes that I work with, and 15 to 18-year-olds, like it's just not worth it if it's not going to make my life easier. So no, I think you did a great job of summarizing it. I'm just trying to summarize it in my own head now. So
no, absolutely. I love the additional summarization. It lets me know that the talking points that I were making were having an impact, right?
I think you killed it. I really do. And like I said, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. This is impactful, not only for me, but for my athletes. And then I'll love, getting feedback from coaches around the nation that will listen to this and start to dive in, to dig deeper and to learn more.
Absolutely. Hey man, I'm always available. I always love talking shop and sharing, and thanks, coach. Appreciate it, man.